This is Peak Productivity, the podcast for Asana lovers and productivity nerds. Today with Bastien Siebman, we will discuss about how we organize the My Task section, and we will also talk about Asana A/B testing. Welcome to Peak Productivity. Hello, Bastien. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, great. Well, we have some feedback of our first episode after posting it on our social media. It seems that at least the Asana fans like the idea of listening to these two crazy men talking about Asana for half an hour every week. What's the feedback on your side?
I actually haven't posted it yet, so I'm just waiting to get the feedback after I post. But usually people don't say anything, but we know that they consume the content, and that's what's really hard when you create content. And I think the stats are something like 90% of people just consume and don't say anything, which is very frustrating.
Yeah, the passive viewer of social media. What a time to be alive. Cool. Well, today we have plenty of things to talk about. Everything, as our viewers and our listeners know, is Asana related. So we will start talking about the new redesign of Asana sidebar. Probably now all the Asana users have the new design. What do you think about this new design? Is it an improvement from the previous one?
The thing is, I don't care because I don't use the side nav. And I wish people could see that it's way better to not use the side nav. And I see all those angry people on the forum, and they say like, I now have an extra click. It's awful, and they hate Asana, and it's just crazy out there. I think you should never access a project by going through the side nav. It's too hard. And you have to find the right team. You have to open the team. You have to scroll. And that was the case with the previous version of the side nav. So when people say they actually lost effectiveness, I'm a bit surprised because it wasn't effective before. It's not more effective now. So to me, if you can just move away from the side nav, use the favorites, use the search, access your tasks in project through the My Task view, just find other ways. And if you really need to see the complete list of projects, I think the main workaround is to favorite the team. So that means you are one click away from the project list. So every time someone complains about the change, I don't really understand, because to me, it's barely almost the same thing. So yeah, I've stopped fighting with people on the forum about this. But yeah, I feel a bit frustrated.
Yeah, I must say I like the new redesign, basically because I can shift the blocks of content.
Yes.
So now I can have my favorites, and I can move the insights to the bottom. But I think for organizations or teams that are quite small, that don't have plenty of projects, it might make sense to access them through the side nav bar. But as your organization grows and you have dozens of projects and you have to access them quickly, it's much faster to go through the search bar. It's like those old internet times when you had Yahoo and Google. Yahoo had like a directory navigation with categories and all that stuff, and then appeared Google with a search bar, and it changed the search game. So I think that in Asana, Google is the search bar while Yahoo is the side navigation. But I must say that I like it. It also brought some confusion with saved search that used to have the message send, the message receive directly. Now you have to make some shortcuts or use the search.
Yeah, but I think, to me, that's an indication of where Asana is going. When they remove stuff like this, it means that the message feature will not be getting any love anytime soon. And I feel like they're just pulling away from that feature. So some people might be angry because they can't use that feature anymore, but it's just an indication of where Asana is going. Maybe they're working on something even better for messages, or maybe they just want to kill messages. We don't know. But I think still this is an indication.
Yeah, last week we were talking about other tools like Slack or maybe Microsoft Teams. I think that we both, as Asana consultants, advise people to talk about projects or to talk about tasks on Asana and not on
Yes.
Slack. But if Asana hides or lowers the hierarchy of the messages function, it will be difficult. I think it's good to have quite quick access to the messages you have sent or the messages you receive.
Have you used messages? Have you worked with clients using messages? I almost never seen anyone use messages.
Messages as comments inside tasks or messages in projects, yes.
Yeah.
Using messages as standalone feature, no,
No.
definitely not. Yeah,
So
yeah,
to me,
I agree.
that's what's happening. I think no one is using them. They're a bit confusing. I'm not talking about comments and status updates, obviously, but actual messages. My personal intuition is that they might actually kill this to release a chat. I don't have any insights. I have no idea if that's happening, but that would be maybe something that could, especially since they released something recently, an A/B test around showing someone as being active in Asana. I don't know if you've seen this
Yeah.
one. You have a green light next to someone's name. So it feels like they're slowly going towards something that might be a chat, something like this, which is very exciting.
Indeed it is. Definitely, like all these tools tend to converge. Now Slack has this canvas feature where you can have a sort of project management. Let's say
Yeah.
it's very basic, but it is. And we see that Asana is also tending to add these messaging features. I love that you mentioned the A/B testing, because this was another topic that I wanted to discuss in today's episode. It's fun because sometimes some clients say, I see this feature, and I check on my own Asana. I say, no, I don't see it. So how can we explain what it is A/B testing for our viewers and our listeners?
Yeah, so basically A/B test, what it means is, I think it started with email, and you would send an email, and some of the people would get the version A, some people would get version B of the email, hence the A/B. And then you look at the stats of opening the email and clicks you have within the email. And you usually do that on a subset of your mailing list, and then you pick the best version between A and B, and then you send that version to everyone else. And this is what Asana is doing. This is pretty common practice in software development. You add a new feature, but you don't show it to everyone. And you wait to see if people actually use the feature. And I think what's really important in the test is not announcing the feature. You want to see if people find the feature by themselves, which is very confusing for people because they feel like they haven't been warned about the fact that this is coming. But I think it's all part of the test. You want to see if they're using the feature. As consultants, we do get notifications about A/B tests running, most of them. But there are so many things happening. Actually, we at I/Do had to create an entire project just to track everything that's happening. Because as you said, we can't be surprised when we walk into a client's account. So we need to know in advance what's happening.
Yeah, it's funny sometimes because you find out when you work with a client that now this is already live. This is something that we've heard. Sometimes you advise the client that this might be a feature that can show up, like the site nav menu that it was announced that it would be released during this first half of 2023. But it's cool. Some of the features that in the past weeks we've seen, some of them were A/B tested and it was a success. Some of them were sunsetted because it was not a success. One of them, for instance, was the collaborators of a task, that let's say the default position was at the bottom of the detailed view of that
below
task.
The comments,
so yeah, you can see who is involved in that task. I always compare the collaborators of a task to those that are copied in an email message. It's people that are aware that this conversation is happening, but they don't explicitly have to take action on that task. And Asana tested a new placement that was with below the assignee and the date, but it seems that it was not a success. What do you prefer, having them at the bottom or
actually we know that this stopped the A/B test, but we don't know if it was a success or not, because maybe they decided it was a success. They just need to rework some part of it. So we'll see what's happening. I think it does make sense to have the collaborators at the bottom below the comment box, because obviously you want to know who's going to get the comment that you send. But at the same time, when you, I don't know, assign the task to someone else, you want to know who's being notified about this, because there are a couple of actions that you can take in the task pane that will actually be sent to collaborators. So I think it's an interesting test. And what I really like is the fact that Asana is actually working on very small fixes like this and not just releasing new stuff all the time. It's great that they work on things like bundles, for example, but at the same time, there's so many small things we want to be fixed in the tool. It's great to see that people actually work on that stuff all day, every day, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Another feature that probably has been A/B tested and that now some users have already seen it is the possibility to save the layout of a project view in a different way that it used to be. Now we have like a save icon that is a disk. Some people have never seen a disk.
Yeah. We all, so we understand what it is.
But they know that the disk is a save icon. And also next to each tab, there are the typical Asana 3 dots of more features, and you can save the layout. What do you think about this feature?
I think it's a first step towards something that they will release soon as well, which is the ability to create new views. Because for a long time you had list, board, calendar, and timeline, and we know that they're working on the ability to add new tabs. For example, a second list view with a different filter, a third list view with a different sort. So I think it's all part of the same experiment of making things a bit clearer. I think Monday has this, like an ability to have really defined views and not be stuck with those 4 layouts. Because to be honest, most of the layouts don't make sense in most of the project. And we sometimes want to have 2, 3, or 4 different list views. So I think it's a very good step in the right direction.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion to Asana's product team, I would.
Because obviously they're listening, right? They're going to be watching.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd love that you can save a view only for yourself and not modifying the view for everyone, because probably the same project, the manager needs one view, a developer needs another view, or and I'd love that you can establish this view only for your account and not for everyone.
Which is not the case, right? This is not what they're working on, correct?
No. It seems that you can add multiple views. Maybe you can add a view that it's for you, but this view will be available for everyone, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because if you are able to create private views, you won't benefit from a new ways the project would be organized. For example, let's say you build a project, you organize everything around sections. Mm-hmm. Let's say that someone created a view because they want to sort within sections by date, for example. That's a private view. If suddenly, as a project manager, you change completely and you say, no, we don't want section, we want a custom field, then anyone with a private view will not benefit from that change. So that might actually break some of the views people have been creating. And if you remove a field someone was using to sort their view, it breaks again. So yeah, I don't know if they're going to go down that path, but I'm not sure this would be beneficial, especially for the users that have no clue what's happening. And sometimes you just click without knowing, and potentially you would have a lot of different versions of the same view. Even like hiding or showing completed tasks, that's a major difference. depending on what you choose, you might completely miss the point. So I'm not sure this would be beneficial to allow anyone to create their own view. We'll see what they decide. What do you think?
Well, it's a good point. It's a good point. Probably if Asana adds the ability to add additional views besides those that are like the 4 default layouts right now, maybe if those additional views can be private or shared, it can be a good idea. To be honest, I never thought that perspective. So it makes a lot of sense.
What's really hard for the product team is to decide between making the tool more customizable, but at the same time making it harder to use and more complex. And every time you add a button, that just makes the tool more complex and the onboarding harder. And I think they've done a good job at not making the tool more complex over time. But that also means that a lot of the features people expect will never be done because it would just make things too hard to work with. And a lot of people do not understand that philosophy. On the forum, I see this every day. This is very simple. It's just a button. Why don't you do that? And it's never just a button.
Yeah.
Because if you add more buttons, you end up with an SAP equivalent, which is like super hard to understand with tons of customization. And imagine you and I, the work we would have to do when there's a billion ways of using the same tool with a billion different, it just makes everything harder, I think.
Yeah, and as you said, when you have these sales or pre-sales calls with clients and you make an Asana demo, what they usually value is the simplicity of Asana.
Yes.
How easy to use is. The learning curve is super friendly compared to other tools like Jira, for instance, that it's more complex and it's more, you can customize it more, but the degree of customization, it's also degree of difficulty when onboarding teams.
Exactly. And I don't know if you know, but just to go back on the changes Asana is making, for example, the sidebar change. A lot of people, and again on the forum, are saying, let me go back to the previous side nav. And most of the app out there, they never let you go back. They usually force you to move forward with them. I don't know if you know, but actually Basecamp works that way. They when I looked at the topic a couple of years ago, they actually had 4 different versions of Basecamp because they didn't want to force people to adopt the new ways they created. So, for example, in that case, you would have access to the previous side nav in addition to the new one. But from a developer standpoint, it's a nightmare because you have a lot of different versions to maintain. And obviously, the more versions, the less time you have to create and improve the tool because you have to dedicate time to the older versions. So your tool just doesn't evolve as fast as it could. So I think you just have to, and also, so you have to agree with Asana that there's no choice. They can't let you switch between views. It's just too hard. And also what people don't understand is their use case is usually not the one for the other millions of users. And I think we have, especially on the forum, we have this bias of seeing like 100 people complaining, but we don't see the millions of others not saying anything and just being happy with the change. So you shouldn't look at those 100 people as people saying the absolute truth. It's just a small part of the people complaining very vocally about something. It doesn't mean that the rest actually agrees, because people that are happy usually do not come on the forum saying it's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. It happens with software. It happens in real life, also with politics and all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Talking about customization and trying to adapt Asana to each individual user. One of the features and one of the sections that I think that we as consultants spend more time is talking about my tasks view, that at the end of the day is the way that each user impacts in the organization in both directions. delivering the value, completing task, and reporting about the work that everyone has done to the rest of the organization. Asana has a default way to organize my task with the assigned recently, today, next week, upcoming.
Yeah, they keep changing the wording, don't they? You have upcoming, now it's due soon. And at one time you had due next week, which doesn't really make sense. So yeah, they just keep changing stuff.
What's your advice to users that onboard on Asana to manage this section?
I think to me that view is the number one view in Asana. That's the best one. And this is where I spend my day. I almost never go into project. That's also why I don't really care about the sitemap redesign. I almost never go to project. I do everything from my task and I navigate to the project if I have to. And I think if you know how to learn how to use my task properly, that completely unlocks the potential that Asana has. If you don't use my task, on the other hand, you're completely missing the point. And the other day I had someone tell me, I hope you're sitting down, I'm not using my task. I just read my email Asana notifications.
Oh, well,
And
that's super old school.
I died inside a little bit because obviously relying on email doesn't make sense. The Asana inbox is more powerful. And also there's not a link between the notifications you get and things you have to do. If you only read notifications, you basically react to new stuff and you don't have this ability to organize and prioritize your work. So to me, that's a very bad, not a bad behavior, but a very bad thing to do, completely missing the point. So my task is very important. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. I totally agree, and go ahead.
So to me, there are two ways to use my tasks efficiently. The first one is to sort by due date, just to be able to see what's overdue and see what's at the top. But that's only, in my opinion at least, that's only one view you should look at sometimes. But the main view you should have is the one grouped by sections, custom sections, like the one you described, recently assigned, etc., etc. And I think when you agree to use that view, you need to have the recently assigned. That's where a task will arrive anyway. So that's your triage area. You need to have something for later that is closed all the time, where you can put away stuff and really clear your mind. And what's in between is really up to you. In my case, I have top priority, important secondary. To me, that's better to triage by priority and not just by date, because the date is only part of the picture. It's only part of the information. You have way more stuff to take into account. But really, custom sections is the key to being organized. What I usually tell my clients is, whatever system you decide, you have to be able to tell me what you should be working on and next. What's your next priority? It should take you 3 seconds to know exactly what you have to do next. If you sort your My Task by project, you cannot answer this question. It's impossible. And this is something I see very often.
Yeah, one of the most common mistakes that you can see, especially with teams that started using Asana on their own without the advice of an expert, is that people create a project to home their task. And when you explain them how My Tasks can manage, help you manage your work, it's like a revelation. Okay, so I don't need to create a new project to
it's either a revelation, or they argue that a project has more capabilities than the My Task view. And it used to be very, very true. Back in the days, My Task was behaving really weirdly. And right now, it's as close as it gets to a project. The only thing is you don't have a timeline, and there's a few other small stuff missing. Otherwise, there's really no reason to have a project separated to deal with your tasks.
Yeah, I totally agree. Any suggestion or inspiration regarding custom fields for My Tasks view? Do you recommend
Yeah,
them?
so
Or
yeah, I do. So one thing we do at work is we have a drop down for task type, and in that drop down we have meeting, quote, invoice, process, and anything we play with. Most of the tasks actually have a type, so we decided to type anything. And in the quote project, we have an automation that selects the quote type automatically, and we have this in every single project. If you add this field in your My Task view, then you can rely on the type to automate where the tasks are going. For example, you could say that an invoice always goes to the top priority, a quote always goes into the important section, and anything related to admin goes to the secondary priority. And once you have that system in place, you can really use this to automate better. We have the same thing with the priority dropdown that we have. We have a priority dropdown with a single option, which is high priority. And we use this as well sometimes to automate stuff in the My Task view.
cool.
Otherwise you have the good old time tracking field that you might want to see in My Tasks.
Yeah, I have. I also have this type of task custom field, and I have a weird one that it's called energy level, and I fill it
Oh
with
yeah,
the energy level required to complete that task. So
it's a good
I
one.
can place the task depending on my energy supply level.
Yeah.
And I have high energy tasks early in the morning and low energy tasks later during the day, or even before finishing my
It's a very good one, and that's a good one. But I think that only applies to people like us with a massive amount of tasks. Otherwise, you just do whatever is at the top of the list, and that's kind of okay, I think. But yeah, I feel you.
I also I don't know if this is something new that you can display in My Task information, like who the visibility of that task, or
Yeah, it's
who
new.
created that task. Yeah, it's something that it was already there, but that you had to enable. Sometimes it's good because there are some organizations where priority depends not on the task, but who created the task. Like if the CEO is assigning me a task, I want that task to be on top. So I think it's good. But again, I think that this is maybe not super intuitive, that My Task is fundamental when onboarding on Asana, and some teams forget about this thing.
And
Yeah.
also, what we do in our team is we share each other's My Task with the others. So just as a reminder, when you share your My Task, there's a share button at the top. When you share your My Task, it doesn't share your actual tasks. It shares the structure and the sort that you have. And we do this because when I open my colleague My Task, if I do that on my screen, I can see exactly the section he has. I can see what's in the top priority, second priority, and I can potentially pick up some work and help him and triage some stuff for him if he or she is really overwhelmed. We also have the same thing apply to our assistant. When we assign something to her, we can place the task in the right bucket based on the priority that we decided for her.
Sounds good. I love that concept of the triage, because sometimes clients say, well, if I have the today section, why don't the task goes automatically to today? And I have to explain that sometimes someone assigns you a task because they think that you are the one that can make it, but probably you are not. So you have to delegate that task. And unless you have this triage section, the task can go, if it's today, you will see that task immediately. But if it goes to like next month or next week, it might be hidden when probably if you delegate it or if you change the due date while triaging, it helps.
Yes, you have to triage. And in My Task, I have the auto promotion rule that makes something due today go back at the top of the list. And in my case, it doesn't go into the today section because I don't have one, but it actually goes into the triage section, into the recently assigned, because I always want to reevaluate the priority of a task, reevaluate if I want to delegate, change the date, change the priority, or do something else. So having that triage area is really important. But you also need to be able to triage very, very quickly, because you will, in my case, I have something like 40 different tasks every day being promoted from before, in addition to anything assigned to me. So some days you can have close to 50 tasks to triage. So you need a way to triage very quickly.
Any recommendation when it comes to how often you have to check my task?
I have the mental ability to do that very, very often, just like I check my email very, very often and triage very, very quickly. But I know that some people might be overwhelmed and not be able to multitask as much. At least once a day is the bare minimum, I'd say. A couple of times a day is ideal.
Cool. Yeah, I totally agree. I advise on checking it at least twice, starting and finishing your day, and maybe if you have lunch break, having a glimpse before lunch to check how the day is unfolding. Also, it's good. Cool. Well, we're reaching the end of this second episode. Today we discussed about A/B testing, about my task, custom fields, and all these features that Asana is launching. We invite all our listeners to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We also remind you that if you need more advice, you can reach out to Bastien or myself. You have the URL of our agencies in the video. And Bastien, again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, like always. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.